The great hall of the Yongguk Empire shimmered with 1,000 lights. Princess Hana stood at the edge of the crowd, her purple scales catching the glow of the ceremonial fires. Around her, nobles from 17 star systems had gathered for the celestial festival. This was the night when young dragonkin would prove their worth to the Empire. Hana's claws dug into her palms. She knew what was coming. She had known for weeks. On the central platform, her brother Daehyun stepped forward. He was everything a dragon prince should be. Tall, with crimson scales that gleamed like polished metal, his wings spread wide, casting shadows across the marble floor. The crowd fell silent. Daehyun took a deep breath. Then he opened his mouth and released a stream of plasma fire so bright that people had to shield their eyes. The flames were white-hot, perfect, and powerful. They shot 50 feet into the air before he closed his jaws. The hall erupted in applause. Next came Sora, Hana's older sister. Her scales were golden, her movements graceful. When she breathed fire, it came out in controlled spirals, dancing through the air like living ribbons of light. The nobles gasped in wonder. Even Empress Mireille, their mother, smiled with pride. Then the ceremony master called Hana's name. Every eye in the hall turned to her. Hana walked to the platform on shaking legs. She could feel the weight of their stares. Some looked curious. Others looked bored. A few looked pitying, because everyone knew about the youngest princess. Everyone knew her secret. Hana was flame dead. She stood in the center of the platform. The silence stretched out like a physical thing. She closed her eyes and reached deep inside herself, searching for the fire that should live in every dragonkin. She found only a cold, empty space where her fire gland sat useless in her chest. But she had to try. She opened her mouth and pushed with everything she had. A tiny spark flickered between her teeth. It lasted maybe 2 seconds before dying out. A whisper of smoke drifted upward. En remotion before. Someone in the crowd laughed. Then another. Soon the whole hall was filled with the sound of mocking laughter. Hana stood frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe anything but shame. She looked at her mother. Empress Mireille had turned away. Hana ran. She didn't care that it was improper. She didn't care that princesses weren't supposed to show weakness. She fled through the corridors of the palace until she reached her chambers. There, she collapsed against the wall and tried not to cry. Hours later, after the guests had gone and the palace had grown quiet, Hana left her room. She meant to go to the gardens, but voices from the council chamber stopped her. The girl is an embarrassment. That was High Counselor Boren. She should never appear in public again. She's my daughter. Her mother's voice was tired. What would you have me do? Send her away. The mining colony at HFY Station needs an administrator. It's far from the core worlds. No one important goes there. She can live out her days in obscurity. Everything applies. There's nobody who heard the magarding this Penton 14. There was a long pause. Then Mireille spoke again. Very well. Make the arrangements. Hana didn't wait to hear more. She walked slowly back to her chambers, each step feeling heavier than the last. Exile. They were sending her away because she couldn't breathe fire, because she was useless. 3 weeks later, Hana arrived at HFY Station. It was nothing like the gleaming cities of the Yongguk homeworld. The station was a rough collection of metal buildings clinging to a rocky asteroid. Miners worked the deep tunnels, pulling out rare metals for the Empire. The air smelled like machine oil and stone dust. Hana had hidden her royal markings under simple clothes. She didn't want anyone here to know who she was. She just wanted to disappear. She wandered the station's main street, if it could be called that. It was really just a wide corridor lined with shops and workspaces. Most of the residents were Yongguk, but there were others too. Humans, mostly, brought in for their skill with machines. A few other species she didn't recognize. That's when she heard the sound of hammering. The forge sat at the end of the street, heat pouring from its open door. Hana moved closer, drawn by curiosity. Inside, a human man worked at an anvil. He was shorter than her, as all humans were, with dark hair going gray at the temples. His arms were covered in old burn scars. He held a piece of glowing metal with tongs, turning it carefully, studying it. Then, he brought his hammer down in a series of precise strikes. Each hit rang out like music. He worked with complete focus, like nothing else in the universe existed except him and the metal. Hana watched for almost an hour. The human never noticed her. He finished the piece, a replacement part for a mining drill, and set it aside to cool. Then, he started on something else. There was something peaceful about it. Something that made the tight knot in Hana's chest loosen just a little. She came back the next night. And the night after that. Always staying in the shadows outside the door. Always watching the human work. His name was Jinho. She learned from hearing others talk. He had a reputation for being able to fix anything. Miners came to him with broken tools, and left with them working better than new. On the fourth night, Jinho looked up from his work and spoke without turning his head. "You planning to just watch forever? Or are you going to come in?" Hana froze. She considered running. But something made her step through the door instead. Jinho glanced at her, then went back to his work. "I'm not," Hana said quietly. "I was just watching." "Why?" She didn't know how to answer that. "You look peaceful when you work," Jinho snorted. "Peaceful? That's a new one." He set down his hammer and really looked at her for the first time. His eyes were sharp, missing nothing. "You're dragonkin. What's one of you doing watching a human blacksmith? I have nowhere else to be." Something in her voice made him pause. He studied her more carefully. "Running from something? Or running to something? Does it matter?" "Usually." He turned back to his forge, but his voice was gentler. "You can watch if you want. Don't bother me while I'm working." Hana came back every night after that. Sometimes Jinho talked while he worked, explaining what he was doing. Sometimes, they sat in comfortable silence. He never asked about her past. He never seemed to care that she was Yongguk and he was human. Then, 2 weeks after she arrived, the raiders came. They hit the station at shift change, when most of the miners were between the tunnels and their quarters. 5 of them, wearing mismatched armor and carrying plasma weapons. They weren't after the metal in the mines. They wanted the credits that the station kept for paying workers. Hana was near the residential section when she heard screaming. She ran toward the sound and found the raiders cornering a group of miners. 3 humans, 2 Yongguk, all unarmed. One of the raiders, a scarred Yongguk with green scales, grinned at them. "Hand over your credit chips and nobody gets hurt." The miners fumbled for their chips, terrified. But one of the humans, a young man, didn't move fast enough. The raider raised his weapon. Hana didn't think. She just acted. She jumped between them and tried to breathe fire. Nothing came out. Not even a spark. The raider stared at her for a moment. Then he started laughing. "What was that? Did you just try to—" He laughed harder. "A flame-dead dragon. That's the saddest thing I've ever seen." The other raiders joined in the laughter. Hana felt her face burn with shame. She had tried to be brave, tried to be useful, and she couldn't even manage that. Then a voice cut through the laughter. "That's enough." Jinho stood at the end of the corridor. He held a long metal rod, still glowing red-hot from the forge. He must have pulled it straight from the fire. The lead raider sneered. "A human? Go back to your shop, little man." Jinho didn't answer with words. He moved. What happened next, Hana would replay in her mind 1,000 times. Jinho didn't fight like a Yongguk warrior, all strength and fire. He fought like a human. Smart. Fast. Using everything around him, he swung the hot rod at the first raider's weapon, knocking it aside. Then he slammed it into the raider's knee. Jinho spun and threw the rod at another raider, hitting him in the face. Before the others could react, He had grabbed a loose pipe from the wall and was already moving again. In less than a minute, all 5 raiders were on the ground, either unconscious or moaning in pain. Jinho stood over them, breathing hard, the pipe still in his hands. Station security arrived moments later and dragged the raiders away. The rescued miners thanked Jinho and scattered. Soon, it was just Hana and the blacksmith in the corridor. Jinho looked at her, really looked at her. "I failed," Hana said bitterly. "I can't even breathe fire. I'm useless." Jinho was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that changed everything. "Broken things aren't useless. They're just waiting for the right hands." Hana stared at him. "What?" "I've been working metal for 30 years, Jinho said. "Sometimes they're made wrong from the start. Doesn't mean they're worthless. Just means they need someone who knows how to fix them." "I can't be fixed," Hana whispered. "Maybe not," Jinho admitted. "But you won't know until you try." He started walking back toward his forge. Then he paused and looked back at her. "You want to keep feeling sorry for yourself? That's your choice. But if you want to feel useful, come by the forge tomorrow. I need someone with strong hands and scales that can handle heat. Pays not much, but it's honest work." He left her standing there in the corridor, stunned. That night, for the first time since the Celestial Festival, Hana felt something other than despair. It was small and fragile, almost too frightening to acknowledge. It felt like hope. Hana stood outside the forge for 10 minutes before she found the courage to enter. The morning sun cast long shadows through the station's windows. Inside, she could hear Jinho already at work, hammer ringing against metal. She pushed open the door. Jinho looked up briefly, nodded, and pointed to a heavy leather apron hanging on the wall. "Put that on. We're starting with the basics. No ceremony, no questions about why she came, just work." The first day was harder than Hana expected. Jinho set her to sorting scrap metal, separating different alloys into different bins. It seemed simple, but it wasn't. She had to learn to recognize metals by sight, by weight, by the sound they made when struck together. "This one?" she asked, holding up a twisted piece of dark gray metal. Jinho barely glanced at it. "Titanium composite. Blue bin." "Jinho, how can you tell without even looking? The way you're holding it. Titanium's lighter than steel. You'd grip steel. Different." He set down his hammer and walked over. "Here. Close your eyes." He placed 2 pieces of metal in her hands. "Tell me which is which." Hana felt foolish, but she closed her eyes. She focused on the weight, the texture, the temperature. "This one's colder, heavier. Steel? Good. And the other? Lighter, warmer to touch. Aluminum? See? You can learn." Jinho took the pieces back. "Everything in this forge is about paying attention. The color of heated metal tells you its temperature. The sound of the hammer tells you if the strike was true. The smell of the quench tells you if the cooling is right. You don't need fire to understand fire." End quote. End quote. End quote. Those words stuck with Hana. She didn't need fire to understand fire. The work was exhausting. Her muscles, trained for flying and combat, weren't used to the repetitive motions of forge work. By the end of the first day, her shoulders ached and her hands were sore despite her scales. But when Jinho examined the sorted scrap bins, he grunted approval. "Not bad. Tomorrow, we start the real work." Hana came back the next day, and the next, and the next. Jinho taught her to work the bellows, controlling the airflow to adjust the forge's temperature. He showed her how to hold tongs properly, how to position metal on the anvil, how to read the rainbow colors that appeared on heated steel. "Why did you become a blacksmith?" Hana asked one afternoon. Jinho was quiet for a long moment. "I used to build spaceships. Real high-tech work. All computers and precision tools. Had a good job. A family. A house on New Terra. What happened? Plasma fire, he said simply. A cargo ship had a containment failure in orbit. The captain ignored safety warnings, pushed his engines too hard. When the plasma tanks ruptured, the fire spread to the residential sectors. He stared at his scarred hands. My wife and daughter were in those sectors. I was at work. Thanks for watching. Hana felt her chest tighten. I'm sorry. It was 15 years ago. Jinho took a drink of water. Afterward, I couldn't work with computers anymore. Couldn't stand being around all that tech. So I came out here, to the frontier. And I learned to work with my hands. Something simple. Something real. Metal doesn't lie to you. It doesn't malfunction. It just is what it is. Do you blame the Yongguk? Hana asked quietly. The captain was one of my kind. I blame one careless captain, Jinho said. Not a whole species. Stupidity crosses all boundaries. He looked at her. Your turn. Why are you really here? You're not just some random dragonkin. You've got the bearing of someone who's seen palace halls. Hana hesitated. Then, slowly, she told him. About the celestial festival. About her broken fire gland. About her mother sending her away. She told him things she hadn't said to anyone. Jinho listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a while. Then he said, So, your people measure worth? By fire? By everything fire represents. Strength, life, honor. Without fire, a Yongguk is nothing. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Hana blinked. What? You heard me. Jinho stood and walked to a shelf. He pulled down a sword, old and battered. This blade can't cut anymore. Edge is ruined. Metal's fatigued. By your logic, it's worthless. Right? I suppose so. Wrong. He set it on the anvil. This sword can be reforged, melted down, and made into something new. Or it can be ground down and turned into a dozen knives. Or it can be mounted on a wall and teach young smiths about flawed tempering techniques. Just because it can't do what it was originally made for, doesn't mean it has no value. He picked up his hammer. Everything can be something. You just have to figure out what. Those words echoed in Hana's mind for days. 2 weeks into her apprenticeship, something changed. Hana was working the bellows while Jinho shaped a piece of hot metal. She found herself noticing things she hadn't seen before. The way the metal flowed under his hammer, the precise angle of each strike, the rhythm of the work. You're smiling, Jinho observed without looking up. She was. For the first time in months, maybe years, Hana felt something like contentment. She was doing something, building something, being useful. I never thought I'd enjoy physical work, she admitted. Most people don't understand labor, Jinho said. They think it's beneath them. But there's honor in making things. In taking raw materials and creating something that helps people live their lives. Every tool I make, every part I repair, it means some miner can do their job safely. That matters. A young Yongguk engineer named Kiwon started visiting the forge regularly. He had one withered wing, twisted from birth, and walked with a slight limp. The other Yongguk on the station treated him with the same distant politeness they showed Hana. Like, he was lesser. But Kiwon was brilliant with machines. He could look at a broken device and see immediately what was wrong. He and Jinho often worked together on complex repairs. One day, Kiwon arrived with a worried expression. Jinho, I need your help. The station's main water recycler is making strange noises. I can't figure out what's wrong. Jinho wiped his hands. Let's take a look. They spent hours in the recycling plant, Jinho and Kiwon, taking apart the massive machine piece by piece. Hana watched, fascinated. She saw how Jinho's understanding of metals and stress points combined with Kiwon's knowledge of engineering. Together, they found the problem. A worn bearing that was causing vibrations. I can make a replacement, Jinho said, but I'll need exact measurements. I can get those, Kiwon replied. He pulled out a scanner, then paused. Wait. This bearing is inside the thermal shield. Standard scanners won't work through it. They both looked at Hana. My scales, she said slowly, understanding. They can handle the heat. If you're willing, Jinho said. It's going to be uncomfortable. Hana climbed into the access shaft, past the thermal shields, and held the scanner where Kiwon directed. The heat was intense, but her scales protected her. A human or even Kiwon with his weaker constitution couldn't have done it. When they finished the repair, the recycler ran smoothly. The station manager was so pleased he paid Jinho double. That night, back at the forge, Jinho split the payment 3 ways. Equal shares. We all did the work. Hana stared at the credit chips in her hand. It was a tiny amount compared to what she'd had as a princess. But she'd earned it. With her own hands, her own effort. It felt like the most valuable thing she'd ever owned. Jinho, she said quietly. Can I ask you something? Sure. When you look at me, what do you see? He considered the question seriously. I see someone who shows up every day. Someone who's learning. Someone with strong hands and a good mind. He met her eyes. I see someone useful. Hana felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them back. For what? For seeing me. A few days later, while they were working, Jinho's scanner malfunctioned. He was using it to check the internal temperature of a complex piece, and it started giving strange readings. Damn thing's broken, he muttered. I'll have to send for a replacement. R. But as he passed the scanner over Hana's chest, it went wild. The readings spiked and fluctuated erratically. Jinho frowned. He adjusted the settings and tried again. Same result. Hold still, he said. He moved the scanner slowly over Hana's torso, watching the display intently. His frown deepened. That's odd. What is? There's something blocking the scanner. A dense, crystalline structure right around where your fire gland should be. He looked up at her. Has anyone ever done a physical scan of your internals? The royal physicians examined me many times. They said my fire gland was simply non-functional. A genetic defect. Did they use scanners, or just mystical diagnostics? Hana thought back. They used traditional methods. Meditation, spiritual sensing, bloodline analysis. But no actual physical scans? No. Is that important? Jinho was quiet for a long time, staring at the scanner readings. When he spoke, his voice was careful. Hana, I think your fire gland might not be broken. I think it might be blocked. The words didn't make sense at first. Blocked? There's a crystal growth around it. Could be from an illness you had as a child, or just a developmental abnormality. But if it's blocking the gland... He trailed off. Then what? Jinho met her eyes. Then maybe you're not flame dead. Maybe you just need surgery. The world seemed to tilt. Hana grabbed the edge of the workbench to steady herself. Surgery? Is that possible? I don't know. Jinho admitted. Yongguk biology isn't my specialty. But the principle is sound. If something's blocked, you remove the blockage. Who would do it? I can't go back to the Empire. They've already given up on me. I could do it, Jinho said slowly. I'd need to study your anatomy, create custom tools, map everything precisely. And it would be risky. Very risky. One wrong move could paralyze your fire gland permanently. Or worse. Hana's mind raced. Hope and fear warred in her chest. After so many years of believing she was broken beyond repair, could it be this simple? Could she actually be fixed? I need to think about it, she whispered. Of course. Take all the time you need. But even as she said it, Hana knew what her answer would be. She had spent her whole life defined by what she lacked. If there was even a chance, even a small one, to change that, she had to take it. 3 days later, she walked into the forge and found Jinho bent over a workbench, studying anatomical diagrams on a datapad. I want to do it, Hana said. The surgery. I want to try. Jinho looked up. He studied her face, searching for doubt. Then he nodded. All right. Then we start preparing. This won't be easy, and it won't be quick. But if you're committed, so am I. Why? Hana asked. Why would you do this for me? Risk so much? Jinho thought about it. Because you remind me why I became a smith in the first place. To fix broken things. To make them whole again. He smiled slightly. After playing, besides, you've become a decent apprentice. Be ashamed to lose you now. They shook hands, human and dragonkin, blacksmith and princess. Neither knowing that this decision would change both their lives forever. In that moment, standing in the warm light of the forge, Hana felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't useless after all. Preparation took weeks. Jinho worked late into the night, studying Yongguk anatomy texts that Kiwon managed to acquire. The diagrams were complex, showing organs and systems that had no human equivalent. The fire gland was particularly complicated, connected to neural clusters and vascular networks in ways that made Jinho nervous. It's like trying to remove a stone from the middle of a spider's web, he told Hana one evening. Everything's connected to everything else. Pull the wrong thread, and the whole thing collapses. Hana watched him work, seeing the stress lines deepen around his eyes. You don't have to do this. I know the risk. I'm not worried about the risk, Jinho said. I'm worried about getting it right. He set down the data pad and rubbed his face. I've repaired 1,000 broken things, but I've never operated on a living being. This is different. You saved my life once already, Hana said quietly. When those raiders came. And in a way, you've been saving it every day since, teaching me that I have worth. That's harder to fix than any physical wound. Jinho was quiet for a moment. Then he picked up a piece of metal he'd been shaping. I've been working on the surgical tools. Memory alloy tips that can flex around delicate tissue. Microblades sharp enough to cut crystal without shattering it. I think I'm close. Kiwon became an essential part of the preparation. His access to the station's medical scanners let them map Hana's internal structure in detail. They worked in secret, always after hours, always careful that no one saw what they were doing. The crystal formation is bigger than I thought, Kiwon said one night, studying the scan results. It's wrapped around several nerve clusters. This is going to be extremely difficult. And, quote, can it be done? Hana asked. Kiwon looked at Jinho. With human surgical techniques? Maybe. Our doctors would never attempt it. Too risky. They'd rather let the patient live flame dead than risk killing them on the operating table. What would you do? Jinho asked him. If it was your wing. If someone offered to fix it, but the surgery might kill you. Would you take that chance? Kiwon looked at his withered wing. He'd lived his whole life, dragging it behind him. Feeling the stares, hearing the whispers. Yes, he said finally. I'd take the chance. Living half alive is worse than not living at all. 3 weeks into preparation, everything changed. A luxury transport ship docked at Tewa Station. Such ships never came here. This was a working station, rough and industrial. When the airlock opened and Prince Daehyun stepped out, everyone stopped and stared. Hana's brother had come. She was in the forge when Kiwon burst through the door, breathless. Hana, your brother is here. He's looking for you. He's been going door to door. Hana felt ice in her stomach. Why is he here? I don't know, but he has station security with him. Official business. Jinho set down his hammer. You want to hide? Hana considered it. But hiding would only delay the inevitable. No. I'll face him. She found Daehyun in the station administrator's office, looking utterly out of place among the functional furniture and plain walls. He wore ceremonial armor, his scales polished to a mirror shine. When he saw Hana in her work clothes, covered in forge dust, his lip curled in disgust. So this is where you've been hiding, he said, playing at being a laborer. What do you want, Daehyun? Mother sent me. She's arranged a marriage for you. Lord Taman, of House Silver, needs a political alliance. He's willing to overlook your deficiency in exchange for the connection to our house. Hana felt her claws extend involuntarily. I'm not interested. It's not a request. You've had your little vacation in exile. Now it's time to be useful to the Empire. Daehyun waved a hand dismissively. Pack whatever you need. We leave in 2 hours. I said no. Daehyun's eyes narrowed. You think you have a choice? You're an embarrassment to our house. At least as a political bride you serve some purpose. I already serve a purpose, Hana said. I work. I build things. I help people. You work in a forge? Daehyun laughed. That's what humans and defectives do. You're a princess of the Yongguk Empire. This is beneath you. Nothing honest is beneath anyone, Hana shot back. I've learned more in 2 months here than in a lifetime at court. Daehyun's expression turned cold. I don't have time for your rebellion. You're coming with me. If I have to drag you to the ship, I will. She's not going anywhere. Both of them turned. Jinho stood in the doorway. Compared to Daehyun's gleaming armor and perfect scales, the human looked small and plain. But he stood his ground. Daehyun stared at him with contempt. Who is this? My teacher, Hana said. Daehyun laughed again. A human is teaching you? What could a human possibly teach a Yongguk? More than you'd understand, Jinho said calmly. And like the lady said, she's not going with you. Do you know who I am? Daehyun took a step forward. I am Prince Daehyun of House Crimson. You're a human laborer. You have no authority here. Maybe not. But she's made her choice. Respect it. Daehyun's scales began to glow with heat. Hana recognized the signs. Her brother's temper was rising. You dare speak to me this way? I could burn you to ash where you stand. You could try, Jinho said. His voice was still calm, but Hana heard the steel beneath it. But I don't think you want to explain to the station authorities why you murdered a registered resident. Even princes have to follow some laws. This is absurd. Daehyun turned back to Hana. Tell your pet human to stand down, or I'll have him arrested for interfering with imperial business. He's not my pet, Hana said quietly. He's my friend, and he's worth 10 of you. Something dangerous flashed in Daehyun's eyes. Fine. You want to play games? I'll play. He reached into his armor and pulled out a data crystal. This is a medical report from the royal physicians. It confirms that you are flame dead, unsuitable for any noble role, and recommends permanent exile. Mother can use this to strip you of your title entirely. You'll be nobody. Nothing. I'm already nothing by your standards, Hana said. You made that clear at the Celestial Festival. Then you have nothing to lose by coming with me. At least as Lord Taman's bride. You'll have status. Here, you're just a broken dragon, playing in the dirt. Hana felt something crack inside her. All her life, she'd listened to words like these. All her life, she'd believed them. But standing there, in her work clothes, with forged dust under her claws and calluses on her palms, she realized something. She didn't believe them anymore. I'd rather be a blacksmith's apprentice than a pity bride, she said. At least here, I'm valued for what I can do, not what I should have been able to do. Daehyun's control snapped. Enough. His voice echoed through the office. I am done asking. You are coming with me. Now. He reached for her. Hana stepped back. Jinho moved between them. Don't, Jinho warned. Move, human. Make me. The tension in the room was explosive. Station security officers had gathered at the door, uncertain what to do. This was a dispute between Yongguk royalty and a human resident. Interfering could cause an interstellar incident. Daehyun smiled slowly. You want to challenge me? Fine. I accept. He began removing his ceremonial armor. Yongguk law is clear. Challenges can be settled through combat. I'll give you a sporting chance, human. No fire, just hand to hand. And when I win? Jinho asked. You won't. But if I do, you leave her alone. She stays here. Daehyun laughed. Agreed. This will be entertaining at least. No, Hana said. Jinho. Don't. He'll kill you. He'll try, Jinho said calmly. He started rolling up his sleeves, revealing his scarred forearms. Been in fights before? I'm still here. They cleared space in the station's cargo bay. Word spread fast, and soon half the station's population had gathered to watch. A human challenging a Yongguk prince was unheard of. Kiwon pushed through the crowd to Hana's side. I don't know, Hana whispered. She'd never seen Jinho fight seriously. She'd seen him drive off raiders, but that was different. This was a formal challenge, and Daehyun was a trained warrior. The two fighters faced each other. Daehyun was taller, stronger, with natural weapons in his claws and tail. Jinho looked almost relaxed. He'd tied back his hair and removed his shirt, revealing more scars on his chest and back. Old wounds. Healed long ago. The fight began. Daehyun attacked immediately, using his superior reach and strength. He came in fast, claws extended, going for a quick finish. Jinho wasn't there. He'd slipped to the side, moving with economy that came from experience. Daehyun spun and attacked again, and again. Each time, Jinho evaded, making minimal movements, conserving energy. Stand still and fight, Daehyun snarled. Why? Jinho asked. This is working fine. The prince roared and charged. Jinho dropped low and swept Daehyun's legs. The Yongguk stumbled, but didn't fall. His tail whipped around, catching Jinho across the ribs. The human grunted in pain but rolled with the impact, turning it into a dodge. They circled each other. Daehyun was breathing harder now, frustrated. Jinho watched him with patient eyes. You know why you're losing? Jinho said conversationally. You've never had to fight without your fire. It's a crutch. You never learned to actually read an opponent, to conserve energy, to think. I'm not losing. Daehyun lunged again. This time Jinho didn't dodge. He stepped in close, inside the prince's reach. He drove his elbow into Daehyun's solar plexus, then grabbed his arm and twisted. There was a sickening pop as Daehyun's shoulder dislocated. The prince screamed. He tried to pull away, but Jinho had him locked. With a brutal efficiency, Jinho swept Daehyun's legs again and drove him to the ground. He pinned the prince's good arm and leaned close. Yield, Jinho said quietly. Never. Jinho applied pressure to the dislocated shoulder. Daehyun screamed again. I can pop it back in, or I can make it worse. Your choice. I yield, Daehyun gasped. Jinho released him immediately and stepped back. The cargo bay was absolutely silent. Daehyun clutched his shoulder, his scales flushed with humiliation. You cheated. I used my strengths against your weaknesses, Jinho corrected. That's not cheating. That's tactics. He offered his hand to help Daehyun up. The prince slapped it away. This isn't over, Daehyun hissed. Yes, it is, Jinho said firmly. We had an agreement. I won. Daehyun looked at his sister. The hatred in his eyes made Hana take a step back. You choose this? A human over your own family? I choose someone who sees my worth over a family that never did, Hana said. Daehyun spat at her feet and stormed out, still clutching his shoulder. His guards followed, embarrassed and confused. As the crowd dispersed, Kiwon let out a long breath. That was the bravest and stupidest thing I've ever seen. Both probably true, Jinho admitted. He winced and pressed a hand to his ribs, where Daehyun's tail had hit him. But it worked. Hana moved to his side. You're hurt. I've had worse. Come on. Let's get back to the forge. That night, as Jinho sat with ice on his bruised ribs, Hana made her decision. I want to do the surgery. Soon. Before anyone else comes. Jinho looked at her seriously. Are you sure? After today, your brother will tell your mother what happened. She might come herself. Once we start the surgery, there's no stopping. If she arrives in the middle of it, then we do it now, Hana said firmly. Tomorrow, before she can get here. Tomorrow. Jinho's eyes widened. Hana, I need at least a few more days to. We've prepared as much as we can. Waiting won't make it safer, just riskier. Please, Jinho, I trust you. He studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Tomorrow. We'll do it tomorrow. Kiwan agreed to help. They prepared the forge, sterilizing everything, setting up the scanning equipment. Jinho checked and rechecked his custom tools. Hana tried to sleep that night but couldn't. She lay awake, thinking about fire, about what it would mean to finally have it, about what it would mean if the surgery failed. But mostly, she thought about how Jinho had fought for her. Not with fire, or scales, or natural weapons, just with skill, determination, and the simple belief that she was worth fighting for. Whatever happened tomorrow, she would never forget that. The next morning, as the station's lights flickered to artificial dawn, Hana walked to the forge. It was time. The forge had been transformed. Jinho had cleared all the regular equipment to one side and set up a makeshift operating area in the center. Clean sheets covered a reinforced metal table. Medical scanners borrowed from Kiwan surrounded the space. The surgical tools Jinho had crafted gleamed under bright lights. Hana stood in the doorway, suddenly afraid. This was really happening. Second thoughts? Jinho asked gently. He was washing his hands in a sterilizing solution, methodical and thorough. Terrified thoughts, Hana admitted. But I'm ready. Kiwan was already at the scanner controls, running final calibrations. His hands shook slightly. I've triple-checked everything. The mapping is as detailed as we can get without opening you up, which is what we're about to do, Jinho said. He dried his hands and picked up one of the surgical tools, testing its weight. Hana, I need to be clear about the risks. Best case, we remove the crystal blockage, and your fire gland heals completely. Worst case, I could sever a nerve cluster, and you'd never have fire. Or I could hit a major blood vessel, and you'd bleed out before we could stop it. I understand, Hana said. She climbed onto the table, trying not to shake. Yongguk sedatives don't work well on your species, Kiwan said. You'll be conscious the whole time. You'll feel everything. I know. My people believe pain teaches strength. Hana tried to smile. Though, right now, I'd rather be unconscious. Jinho positioned himself beside the table. I'm going to need you to regulate your body temperature. Too hot, and I can't work. Too cold, and your healing slows. Can you do that? I think so. Don't think. No. Your life depends on it. Jinho's voice was firm but not unkind. I need you present, aware, and controlling yourself. Can you do that? Hana met his eyes. She saw confidence there, and something else. Trust. He trusted her to do her part, while he did his. Yes, she said. I can do that. Good. Jinho picked up a marker and drew lines on her chest scales, marking where he would cut. Kiwan, start the scanner. I want real-time imaging. The scanner hummed to life. On the screen beside the table, Hana could see inside herself. Her organs glowed in different colors, and there, wrapped around her fire gland like a strangling vine, was the crystal formation. It was bigger than she'd thought, with tendrils reaching into surrounding tissue. Ancestors, Kiwan breathed. That's worse than the scans showed. We can still stop, Jinho said, looking at Hana. She shook her head. Do it. Jinho picked up his first tool, a precision cutting blade he'd forged himself. Here we go. Stay still. The first cut felt like fire. Not the good fire Hana had always dreamed of, but burning, searing pain. She gripped the edges of the table, her claws scoring the metal. Temperature, Jinho warned. You're heating up. Hana forced herself to breathe slowly, cooling her internal temperature. The pain didn't stop, but she managed to control her body's response to it. Jinho worked with absolute focus. Each cut was precise, deliberate. He peeled back scales and tissue layer by layer, exposing the fire gland beneath. Hana watched on the scanner screen, seeing her own insides revealed. There it is, Jinho murmured. Kiwan. Magnify Sector 4. The image zoomed in. The crystal formation was clear now, wrapped around the gland like chains. But what made Kiwan gasp was how close it was to major nerve clusters. Jinho, if you slip even a millimeter. I won't slip, Jinho said calmly. He switched to a smaller tool, one with a flexible tip that could bend around curves. Hana, this next part is going to hurt worse. The crystal has grown into the gland itself. I have to separate them without damaging either one. Just do it. Hana managed through clenched teeth. The pain became something beyond description. Hana felt like she was being torn apart from the inside. She heard herself screaming but couldn't stop. Her temperature spiked. Temperature, Kiwan shouted. She's at critical levels. Hana. Listen to me. Jinho's voice cut through the pain. I know it hurts, but you're stronger than this. You've endured years of shame, exile, and rejection. This is just pain. Pain ends. Control it. Something in his words reached her. Hana grabbed onto them like a lifeline. She thought about the forge, about the rhythm of the hammer, about the satisfaction of creating something from raw metal. She thought about Jinho teaching her, patient and steady. She thought about finding worth in unexpected places. Her temperature dropped, stabilized. That's it, Jinho said. Hold that. Just a little longer. He worked for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Piece by piece, he separated the crystal from the fire gland. The material was strange, almost organic, grown from her own body but foreign to it at the same time. Got the main mass, Jinho said. Now for the tendrils. This was the most dangerous part. The crystal had sent out small growths into the surrounding nerve tissue. One wrong cut could destroy the connections that allowed the fire gland to function. Jinho switched to an even smaller tool, one he'd designed specifically for this. The tip was thinner than a hair, sharp enough to cut between cells. Hana. I need absolute stillness now. Don't even breathe deeply. She froze, barely daring to take shallow breaths. On the scanner, she watched Jinho's tool move with microscopic precision. He cut away each tendril, cauterizing as he went to prevent bleeding. Sweat dripped down his face. His hands never wavered. Kiwan monitored the scanner, calling out positions. Tendril at mark 7-3. Another at 9-1. Watch the nerve cluster at 5-5. I see them, Jinho murmured. Cut. Cauterize. Move. Cut. Cauterize. Move. The pattern repeated. Then disaster struck. One of the tendrils was wrapped around a blood vessel. When Jinho cut it, the vessel ruptured. Blood flooded the surgical field. Bleeding! Kiwan yelled. Jinho didn't panic. He grabbed a cauterizing tool and sealed the vessel in one smooth motion. But more blood was coming from somewhere else. There's a secondary rupture, Jinho said, his calm finally cracking slightly. I can't see where. Scanner shows it's behind the gland, Kiwan said. You can't reach it from this angle. Hana felt her consciousness starting to fade. She was losing too much blood. The table beneath her was slick with it. Stay with me, Jinho commanded. Hana, stay with me. She forced her eyes open. On the scanner, she could see the problem. The bleeding was in a space too small for Jinho's tools to reach. Heat, she gasped. I can. Cauterize it. From inside. You can't control your internal temperature that precisely, Jinho said. I can. Learned in the forge. Reading heat. Hana's vision was darkening. Have to try. She didn't wait for permission. She focused inward, finding the bleeding vessel on the scanner. She raised her internal temperature in that specific spot. Just that spot, making it hot enough to seal the rupture. The scanner showed the bleeding slow. Then stop. It worked, Kiwan said, amazed. It actually worked. Jinho didn't waste time being impressed. He went back to work, removing the last of the crystal tendrils. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, he lifted out the last piece. It's done, he said. He set down his tools with shaking hands. The blockage is completely removed. He began closing the incision, layer by layer. Hana's natural healing would do the rest, but he wanted to minimize scarring. His movements were automatic now, muscle memory taking over while his mind processed what they'd just accomplished. When he finished the last suture, he stepped back. Kiwan, check the scanner. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Kiwan studied the screen carefully. It's clean. No remaining crystal. All vessels sealed. Nerve clusters intact. He looked up with wonder. You did it, Jinho. You actually did it. Jinho slumped into a chair, suddenly exhausted. How do you feel? He asked Hana. She took inventory of herself. The pain was still there but fading, and beneath it, she felt warmth. A heat that had never been there before, building in her chest. Different, she whispered. I feel different. The gland needs time to heal, Jinho said. Could be days, could be weeks. We won't know if it works until... The door to the forge slammed open. Prince Daehyun stood there, his shoulders still in a brace, and behind him was someone who made Hana's blood run cold. Empress Mireille. Her mother was smaller than Hana remembered, but no less intimidating. Her scales were deep, crimson, almost black, and her eyes held the weight of ruling 17 star systems. What, Mireille said softly, is happening here? Daehyun pointed at Jinho with his good arm. The human has committed xenosurgery on royal blood without sanction. That's a death penalty offense under Yongguk law. Mireille's eyes swept the room, taking in the blood, the surgical equipment, Hana lying on the table with fresh sutures across her chest. Is this true? She asked Jinho. Did you operate on my daughter? Jinho stood, facing the Empress without flinching. He saved my life, Hana said, struggling to sit up. The royal physicians said I was flame dead. They were wrong. I had a crystal blockage. Jinho removed it. And you permitted this? Mireille asked her daughter. I asked for it. Mireille was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned to Daehyun. Leave us. But mother. Leave. Us. Daehyun left, shooting poisonous looks at both Jinho and Hana. The door closed behind him. Mireille walked closer to the surgical table. She examined the equipment, the tools, the scanner readings. Her expression was unreadable. A human succeeded where the Empire's best physicians failed, she said finally. They looked for mystical causes, Jinho said. I looked for physical ones. Sometimes the simplest answer is the right one. And my daughter trusted you to cut her open, to risk her life. Based on your human medical theories, she trusted me because I saw her worth when no one else did, Jinho said quietly. Including you. The room went deadly silent. No one spoke to an empress that way. But Mireille didn't order his execution. Instead, she looked at Hana. Is this true? Hana met her mother's eyes. He taught me that broken things aren't useless. That worth is built, not given. That I could be more than my fire, or lack of it. She paused. He taught me things you never did. Mireille's scales rippled with emotion. I sent you away to protect you from a court that would destroy you. Every day you stayed, watching your siblings succeed while you failed. I saw you dying inside. So you exiled me, Hana said. And I was dying here too, until Jinho showed me another way to live. Mireille turned back to Jinho. You understand that by law, I should execute you. Operating on royalty without sanction, risking an heir's life. I understand, Jinho said. But I'd do it again. Why? Because she matters. Not because she's a princess. Because she's a person who deserves the chance to be whole. Mireille studied him for a long time. Then she looked at Hana. Can you breathe fire yet? I don't know, Hana admitted. Jinho said it would take time to heal. Then we wait, Mireille decided. If your fire returns, the human's actions saved an heir. If it doesn't, she let the threat hang. And if I can breathe fire, Hana said. But I choose to stay here anyway? To continue working as a blacksmith's apprentice? Mireille actually looked surprised. You would choose this life over returning to court? This life has worth, Hana said simply. What did I have at court besides shame? Her mother had no answer for that. 3 days later, Empress Mireille was still on the station, waiting. The tension was unbearable. Hana could feel the heat building in her chest, stronger each day. But still no fire came. Jinho worked quietly, giving her space, but always nearby if she needed him. Kiwan checked the scanner regularly, confirming that the fire gland was healing properly. On the 4th night, Hana woke suddenly from sleep. Her chest felt like it was burning from the inside. She stumbled out of her quarters and ran to the forge. Jinho was there, working late as always. He looked up when she entered. It's time, Hana gasped. I can feel it. The fire. It's ready. He set down his tools immediately. Are you sure? Yes. Hana stood in the center of the forge. She closed her eyes and reached inside herself. There, where there had always been cold emptiness, she found heat. Real heat. Building and building. She opened her mouth and let it out. White-hot plasma erupted from her jaws. Not a tiny spark. Not a pathetic flicker. Real dragon fire. Pure and bright and fierce. It shot across the forge, heating the metal walls. When she finally closed her mouth, the silence was profound. I can breathe fire, Hana whispered. Tears streamed down her face. Jinho, I can breathe fire. He was grinning, his face lit by joy. You can breathe fire. They stood there, human and dragonkin, in a simple forge on a frontier station, having accomplished what the greatest physicians of an empire declared impossible. Outside, Empress Mireille had seen the light from Hana's fire. She knew what it meant. Tomorrow would bring new choices, new challenges. But tonight, in this moment, Hana was whole, and she knew. Looking at the human blacksmith who had believed in her when no one else did, that the fire in her chest was nothing compared to the warmth in her heart. The morning after Hana's fire returned, Empress Mireille summoned her to the station administrator's office. Jinho insisted on coming along. Kiwan joined them, refusing to be left behind. Mireille sat behind the desk, looking every bit the ruler of 17 star systems, despite the plain surroundings. Daehyun stood beside her, his arm still in a sling, his expression bitter. You've proven the human surgery was successful, Mireille began. Your fire has returned. By all accounts, you should return to the imperial court immediately. No, Hana said simply. Daehyun made a sound of disbelief. You refuse a direct command from the Empress? I'm not refusing anything, Hana said calmly. I'm making a choice. There's a difference. Mireille raised a hand, silencing Daehyun. Explain yourself. Hana took a breath. For years, I defined myself by what I lacked. No fire meant no worth. But here, working in the forge, I learned something different. Worth isn't something you're born with. It's something you build with your own hands, your own effort, your own choices. You've regained your fire, Mireille pointed out. You could return to court with honor now. Honor based on what? My ability to breathe plasma? Hana shook her head. That's not enough anymore. I want to matter because of what I create, what I contribute, not because I inherited the right genetics. You're a princess of the Yongguk Empire, Daehyun snapped. Your duty is to serve the Empire, not play at being a laborer. I am serving, Hana said. Just not the way you think service should look. Mireille studied her daughter carefully. And what would you do if I allowed you to stay? Build something new, Hana said. She'd thought about this for days, planning it in her mind. A forge that combines Yongguk's strength with human ingenuity. A place where both our peoples can learn from each other. We've spent centuries assuming our natural abilities made us superior. What if we learned to enhance those abilities with human innovation? You want to create a cultural exchange program? Mireille sounded surprised. More than that. A school. A workshop. A place where those who don't fit the traditional molds can find their own worth. Hana glanced at Kiwan, who stood straighter despite his withered wing. We have many like me in the Empire. Dragonkin. Born with defects. Considered lesser. What if we gave them another path? Mireille was quiet for a long time. Then she looked at Jinho. And you? What do you want from this? I want to keep my apprentice, Jinho said with a slight smile. She's getting pretty good at metallurgy. Be ashamed to lose her now. You understand that if I agree to this, you'll be responsible for her safety? That you'll be the first human to formally work with Imperial citizens in an official capacity? I've been doing that for weeks already, Jinho pointed out. Might as well make it official. Daehyun stepped forward. Mother, you can't seriously be considering this. A human teaching Yongguk? It's beneath us. Is it? Mireille turned to her son. This human achieved what our best physicians could not. He defeated you in combat without using superior strength or natural weapons. Perhaps it's time we learned some humility. Then. 1. Daehyun's scales flushed with anger, but he said nothing. Mireille stood and walked to the window, looking out at the rough mining station. But perhaps I was giving you the greatest gift I could, even if I didn't know it at the time. She turned back. Very well. I'll fund your forge. You'll establish the first Yongguk Human Cultural Exchange Center. But there are conditions. Name them, Hana said. First, you'll accept students from the Empire. Those who are deemed defective or unsuitable for traditional roles. You'll teach them to find worth in other ways. Gladly. Second, you'll submit regular reports to the Imperial Council. They'll be watching this experiment closely. Understood. Third. Mireille's voice softened slightly. You'll visit the homeworld once a year. You're still my daughter. Even if you choose a different path. I'm in. Hana felt tears prick her eyes. I will. Then it's settled. Mireille walked to the door, then paused. Hana? I'm sorry. For all the years I let you believe you were worthless. I was wrong. After the Empress left, taking Daehyun with her. Hana collapsed into a chair. I can't believe that just happened. Believe it, Jinho said, grinning. You just convinced the Empress of the Yongguk Empire to fund a cultural exchange program. Not bad for someone who thought she was useless 3 months ago. Kiwan was practically vibrating with excitement. A real school, where others like us can learn. Hana, this is incredible. We'll need help, Hana said, her mind already racing with plans. Teachers, equipment, space. The forge is too small for what we're planning. One step at a time, Jinho advised. First, we finish the work we have. Then we expand. But word spread fast. Within days, messages started arriving from across the Empire. Dragonkin with weak flames, missing wings, imperfect scales, all asking the same question. Could they come to Taewa Station? Could they learn? Hana read each message carefully, her heart aching for these people she'd never met but understood completely. We're going to need a bigger forge, she said. The expansion took months. The station administrator, delighted by the attention and funding the project brought, allocated an entire section of unused warehouse space. Jinho designed the layout, combining traditional forge areas with modern workshops and classrooms. The first students arrived in small groups. They came nervous and ashamed, expecting to be treated as lesser. Instead, they found Hana, who understood their pain, and Jinho, who saw only their potential. A young Yongguk named Borum arrived with scales that wouldn't harden properly. In traditional society, she'd be considered too fragile for any important work. Jinho taught her precision metallurgy, where her gentle touch became an asset rather than a weakness. Jimin came with one eye and limited depth perception, deemed unsuitable for warrior training. Kiwan taught him engineering, where his analytical mind excelled. Nari had fire so weak she could barely light a candle. Hana worked with her personally, teaching her to use that small flame for delicate welding work that required precise heat control. Each student found their strength. Each discovered they weren't broken, just different. 6 months after the school opened, Hana stood in the expanded forge, watching her students work. The sound of hammers rang out in rhythm. Sparks flew from welding stations. At the engineering benches, Yongguk students worked alongside human instructors, sharing techniques and ideas. Jinho came to stand beside her. "Proud of yourself?" "Proud of all of us," Hana corrected. "This wouldn't exist without you. Would have happened eventually. You just needed a push." "A push? You repaired my heart and my fire." "No," Jinho said firmly. "I removed a blockage and taught you some metalworking. You did the rest. You chose to see yourself differently. You chose to build something instead of accepting defeat. That was all you." Hana looked at him. This human who had changed her entire world. Over the months, her feelings had grown into something complicated. Respect had become, friendship had become, something else. Something neither of them had quite acknowledged yet. "Jinho," she said quietly. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Do you ever think about what might have happened if I hadn't come to your forge that night?" He considered it. "You would have found another way. Maybe not as quickly, but you would have figured it out. You're stubborn like that. And problem, I'm serious. So am I." He turned to face her fully. "Hana, you give me too much credit. I'm just a blacksmith who knows how to fix things. You're the one who had the courage to be fixed. We make a good team," Hana said softly. "Yeah," Jingyu agreed. "We do." The moment stretched between them, comfortable and warm. Then a student called for help, and they both moved to assist, the moment passing, but not forgotten. That evening, after the students had gone to their quarters and the forge had quieted, Hana practiced her fire breathing. She'd gotten better at it, learning to control the intensity and duration, but she found she rarely used it for combat or show. Instead, she used it like Jinho used his tools, with precision and purpose, for creating, not destroying. Kiwan found her in the practice area, watching her work. "Your sister sent a message," he said. "Sora wants to visit." End quote. Hana paused mid-breath, surprised. "Sora? Really? She says she wants to see what you've built." Kiwan grinned. Also, she might have mentioned being curious about the human who defeated Daehyun in combat. Of course she did. But Hana smiled. Sora had always been the more open-minded of her siblings. "Tell her she's welcome. Anytime." Sora arrived 2 weeks later, bringing gifts and genuine curiosity. She walked through the forge with wide eyes, watching the students work, asking questions about their techniques. "This is amazing," she said to Hana. "I had no idea this kind of collaboration was possible." "Neither did I, until I lived it," Hana admitted. That night, the sisters talked for hours. Sora confessed that court life felt empty sometimes, all politics and no purpose. Hana told her about finding meaning in creation, in teaching, in building something that mattered. "I envy you," Sora said quietly. "You found your path. I'm still following the one laid out for me." "It's not too late to change," Hana pointed out. Sora smiled sadly. "Maybe for you. But I'm the heir. I have responsibilities. We all have responsibilities. The question is whether we choose them or they're chosen for us. Before Sora left, she pulled Hana aside. Mother was right to let you stay here. You're happier than I've ever seen you. She paused. The blacksmith. Jinho. You care about him. It wasn't a question. Hana felt her scales warm with embarrassment. Is it that obvious? To someone who knows you? Yes. Sora squeezed her hand. He's a good person. And he sees you. Really sees you. That's rare. Regardless of species. After Sora's visit, Hana couldn't stop thinking about those words. Jinho did see her. He always had, from that very first night when she'd watched him work from the shadows. One evening, she found him in the forge long after everyone else had gone. He was working on something small. His movements careful and precise. What are you making? She asked. He held up a small metal sculpture. It was a dragon, no bigger than his palm, with wings spread in flight. The details were incredible. Every scale individually carved. It's for you, he said, almost shyly. To commemorate your first year here. Thought you might like it. Well, Hana took the sculpture carefully. It was beautiful, and clearly had taken hours of work. Jinho. This is, if you don't like it, I love it, she interrupted. It's perfect. Thank you. They stood there in the quiet forge, and Hana realized this was the moment. If she was going to be brave, truly brave, it had to be now. I need to tell you something, she said. Okay. When I first came here, I was lost. Broken. Or so I thought. You showed me I wasn't. You taught me to see myself differently. She met his eyes. But somewhere along the way, it became more than that. You became more than just my teacher or my friend. Jinho was very still. Hana, I know it's complicated, she continued. Different species, different lifespans, different worlds. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this doesn't make sense, but I need you to know how I feel. Any mine. How do you feel? His voice was quiet. Like you repaired more than my fire gland, Hana said. Like you showed me what it means to be whole. And I think. The silence that followed felt eternal. Then Jinho smiled. Really smiled. His eyes crinkling at the corners. I think I love you too, he said simply. Have for a while now, if I'm being honest. Just didn't know how to say it. So what do we do? What we always do. Take it one day at a time. Build something together. And see where it goes. Hana laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. That's very practical. That, Monsid, I'm a practical man. You're an incredible man. They came together then, human and dragon kin. Bridging the gap between their species with something as simple and complicated as affection. It wasn't a grand romantic gesture. It was quiet and real, like everything they'd built together. Years passed. The school grew, training hundreds of students who went on to create their own workshops across the empire. The Hana Jinho Forge became famous, a symbol of what could be achieved when different peoples worked together. Empress Mireille visited regularly, watching with satisfaction as her daughter thrived. Even Dae-hyun eventually came around, grudgingly admitting that perhaps humans had some uses after all. The next generation of Yongguk children born with defects were no longer hidden away in shame. They were sent to Taewa Station, to learn that different didn't mean worthless. Parents who once would have despaired now had hope. And through it all, Hana and Jinho worked side by side. They never formally married. The cultural complications too complex. But everyone knew they were partners in every way that mattered. On the 10th anniversary of the Forge's founding, they stood together watching the celebration. Students past and present had gathered, showing off their creations, sharing their successes. The warehouse rang with laughter and the sound of hammers. You know what I realized? Hana said, watching the crowd. What? I spent so many years wanting to breathe fire because I thought it would make me whole. But fire isn't what made me whole. This is creating things, teaching others, building a life that matters. Do you ever use your fire anymore? Jinho asked, curious. Sometimes, for precision work, mostly. The occasional demonstration for new students. She smiled. But it's not what defines me anymore. What does? Hana looked at him. At this human who had believed in a broken dragon princess when no one else would. Who had risked everything to help her. Who had shown her that worth came from within. Not from genetics or abilities. Love, she said simply. Purpose. The knowledge that I matter not because of what I can do, but because of who I choose to be. Jinho took her hand, his scarred fingers intertwining with her scaled ones. That's the wisest thing you've ever said. I learned from the best. They stood there as the celebration continued around them. Human and dragonkin, blacksmith and princess, partners in every way that mattered. They'd built something beautiful together, something that would last long after they were gone. And if someone had told that desperate young princess, hiding outside a forge 3 months into her exile, that she would find not just her fire but her purpose, her worth, and her heart in the least likely of places, she never would have believed them. But here she was. Not in a palace on the Yongguk homeworld, but in a simple forge on a frontier station, surrounded by students who were learning the same lessons she had learned, that broken things aren't useless. They're just waiting for the right hands. And sometimes, the right hands belong to someone who sees past the surface, past the expectations, past the limitations others impose. Sometimes, the right hands belong to someone who simply believes in you. Hana squeezed Jinho's hand gently. He squeezed back, understanding without words, the way they always did. The forge would continue. Students would come and go. The empire would evolve, slowly learning that strength came in many forms. But this moment, right here, a dragon princess who had been told she was useless, a human blacksmith who knew how to repair more than just broken metal. Together, they had changed the galaxy. One forge, one student, one heart at a time. And they had proved, beyond any doubt, that the human spirit, stubborn and ingenious and kind, could accomplish anything, even healing a dragon's broken heart, even helping her learn to fly.